The C-SPAN networks bring you long-form public affairs programming from the nation's capital and are a public service of your television provider. C-SPAN, created by cable.
Dame Mirren. You have to press the red button in front of you to turn the microphone.
Talk. That makes sense. Anyway, I'm Helen Mirren, and I'm an actor who portrayed the role of Maria Altmann in the film Woman in Gold. And excuse me if some of you have seen this, but I'll just explain a little bit. This is the true story of a woman who overcame enormous odds and righted a wrong that had stood for decades. 60 years after fleeing Vienna during the Nazi era, Mrs. Altmann, who was by then an elderly Jewish woman, began a many years long journey to reclaim family possessions seized by the Nazis. Among them was Gustav Klimt's famous painting of Adela Bloch-Bauer, #1, which was a painting of her aunt. So the fight to reclaim what was rightfully hers was forced her to fight the Austrian establishment and to take her case to the US Supreme Court. On a more personal level, Maria had to confront those terrible memories of the end of her family life in Vienna, returning to the country she'd been forced to flee by the Nazis and reliving the pain of having everything she held dear being ripped away from her and the people she loved murdered in the death camps. So I personally had to go on a journey portraying Maria Altmann. And the journey, I mean, I'm a child of the Second World War. I was born in 1945, and the memory of the Second World War was very much a part of my history. But I never really, truly confronted the absolute reality of what had happened in those days. And in playing Maria Altmann, I had to put her memories into my mind. And to do that, I had to read a lot of research material and really relive those moments. And that is why, honestly, I'm here now. It was that journey of playing Maria that made the absolute reality of those days so relevant to me today at this moment in time. It's a terribly sad fact that more than 70 years later, victims of the Holocaust and their families are still contemplating whether to seek restitution for what was stolen from them and lost under the most horrible of circumstances. But a lack of transparency, a lack of access to information concerning the location of stolen art, and a lack of a legal assurance that at least they can have their say in court. This discourages them from taking action. So when considering this issue, it's essential to understand what is preventing the victims of Nazis from reclaiming what is rightfully theirs. Logically, I think we could all agree that the right thing to do in every instance is to return the art to its rightful owners. The very act of Nazi expropriation was not only unjust, but it was unconscionably inhumane. And yet, still today, it seems there are some out there who lack the will to recognize victims and their families as the rightful owners. As the senators pointed out, art lost in the Holocaust is not just important for its aesthetic and cultural value. Restitution is so much more than that, than reclaiming a material good. And this is what I learned by playing Maria Altmann. Restoring physical parts of lost heritage to Holocaust victims and their families is a moral imperative. For me, Maria Altmann, and for many families fighting to reclaim what rightfully belongs to them, art restitution has very little to do with potential financial gains. Art restitution is about preserving the fundamental human condition. It gives Jewish people and other victims of the Nazi terror the opportunity to reclaim their history, their culture, their memories, and most importantly, their families. The generation of Jewish people that were burdened by the cruel acts of the Nazi regime had little choice but to carry on with their lives. After what they had experienced, tremendous loss and deep sorrow, moving forward was the only viable path because the past held such unbearable pain. Today, we live in a freer world where a new generation has emerged with the resources and time to finally begin to deal with this issue and pursue justice. I mean, it was incredible to me. You know, I was doing a play in New York, the audience, and every night when I came out from the, from the stage door, every night people would approach me because the film was out at that time and say, "That's my family's story. That's the story of my family. That happened to us." It's extraordinary how many people out there share Maria's story, their mothers and grandfathers, mothers and grandmothers. So for what it's worth, Maria Altmann's story is one of noble justice, one I believe is important to be told, and the one that should be continued to be told by future generations. And it is a story that is not made possible without this incredible country, the United States of America. These are American stories, stories that capture the integrity and the power of the United States, its justice system, and its rule of law. Maria Altmann's story as a refugee in the United States who was finally granted justice through retaining what was rightfully hers at the hands of the US Supreme Court. But victims of Nazi theft should not have to demonstrate the boldness and capacity to commit the resources that Maria Altmann had in order to recover what is rightfully theirs. Art is a reflection of memories that are shared across familial and cultural lines. When the Jewish people were dispossessed of their art, they lost their heritage. Memories were taken along with the art. And to have no memories is like having no family. And that is why art restitution is so imperative. The lives of so many people could be rejuvenated through the actions and the leadership of the US Congress to ensure that fair and equitable solutions in these cases are assured. Greed, cruelty, self-interest, domination will always be with us. It's an easy option. Justice is so much more difficult. So much more complex. But we all dream of justice. We're incapable of changing the past, but fortunately we have the ability to make change today. Thank you for your leadership and your efforts to address this issue in these modest reforms contained in the HERE Act, by ensuring that at least here in the United States, access to justice and the courts will be ensured. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony.